Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I'm going to have a story up I guess on Wednesday, I believe, because the draft is coming up on Thursday. But it's all about like, okay, they only have 5 picks in this draft. So how are they going to improve with their young guys? Well, you look at last year's class and who can elevate from there. Clearly, I'm not going to write about Jane Daniels that we already know. Mike Samuel, we know guy's going to start, right, et cetera. But there are a handful of other guys, including Jerzon Newton, or Johnny, if you want to call him Johnny, Brandon Coleman, Jordan McGee, and then Sinnott McCaffrey. So, and I think it's a really good class. I think there's still more like Tyler Owens and Dominique Hampton and Javante Jean Baptiste. I think they all can play a role, but I think those other guys can kind of really elevate this roster a little bit more if they come through. So, anyway, that'll be on ESPN.com. There you go. During the draft, we'll be having all sorts of updates. Every time that Washington makes a pick, I'll have a pro and a con about the pick. Try to give you as much analysis as I can. So look for that throughout the entirety of the draft. And you can find information on every team because we're going to have a tracker for every single team. And there's going to be one-stop shopping for all your NFL draft needs and get the analysis all there. So, and see how it matches up with your own take on it. So anyway, and then also, I don't know if you saw an ESPN NFL Nation mock draft on ESPN2 today. I'll be talking about my pick in a few minutes as I get into my final thoughts going into the draft. But one or two more things. Like I did a roundtable with the other beat reporters that ran on Monday. So that was with Nikki, Sam, Ben, JP, Mitch Tischler. So give that a listen. Wanted to get their thoughts on what they would do and just kind of went around a good discussion with those guys. Love having them on. I will do that more often or I'll do that whenever I can. And then I had Logan Paulson on Tuesday. I really enjoyed the discussion as I always do with Logan. Please give that a listen. Some of it was like things that he has learned as the more he's gone along as basically in a scouting area. Like he's not scouting for the team per se, but he is scouting for the analysis for the Commanders on their team site and all that. But he's one of the smartest guys I know. So what he learns, I really pay attention to and how it shapes things for him. So, anyways, give that one a listen to. And this will be the last podcast I do before the draft, and the next one will become after Washington's first round pick. If they make the pick, if they trade it, I'll still be doing one because then that will come out Friday morning, early Friday morning. You'll probably be asleep if they make a trade. So that will come out early Friday morning, but leading into the second round and third round of the draft, what might they do, et cetera. So anyways, we'll have all sorts of stuff for you, or I'll have all sorts of stuff for you throughout the weekend, after every round, or excuse me, after every day, and then wrapping it up on another one for Monday. So there you go, folks. A lot going on. And I just want to go over to my final thoughts going into the draft, starting with my ESPN NFL Nation mock draft pick. And it was cornerback Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. And the reason I went with him is because pretty much a lot of the guys that I probably would have taken were gone. A couple of guys that I think would be a home run pick for them. One of which kind of surprises me because it's not a sexy pick, but perhaps the number one guy that if he was there, the guy I would have taken is Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama, because the thought of getting an interior plug and play guy like that should, I think, excite anybody, despite, again, not a sexy pick, but man, would it solidify that front and give Washington as good a front as it's had in a long, long time, protecting your number one asset in Jane Daniels. It could improve the run game. The dude is strong. He's pulled. They ran, he ran a power scheme in Alabama. He definitely pulled at times. Is he the most nimble? I don't know that it's necessarily a strength, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be a big time weakness from here. But man, the guy is strong, and I think he would be really good in a pass protection role as well. And I think they could use that from their interior. He played left guard at Alabama. My thought would be that's where you're going to put him. And if Nick Allegretti is your backup and your number 3 guard, you're in really good shape. And if Andrew Wiley is your backup swing tackle, you're in really good shape. And this would be the best group they've had in a long, long time. And it could be one that would be together for several years and really, again, protect your back. But anyways, that's why I would have picked Booker had he been there. Mike Green was another guy that I strongly would have considered because I know they are too. He was part of that Top Golf outing. So he has visited. They have met with him a number of times. I know some people weren't sure if they did. I had been told several days ago, and that he actually had visited here. Clearly, there's interest in him, and I know the allegations against him, and I'll get to some of those in a minute because it's is part of a discussion about the character angle of all these draft picks, right? And what matters and all that. Other guys that I would have strongly considered, Donovan Ezeroku, the defensive end from Boston College, another one, Emeka Egbuka. Those guys were all gone. Green, Booker, Egbuka, Ezeroku. A lot of guys were gone before. If you want to give it a read, you can see who all was gone. And the one guy I'd say I debated, but I'm not sold that this team will pick a running back in the first, maybe not even the second round. I'm not sold on that. And so if I had been sold on that, then I probably would have picked Travion Henderson because I think he's another plug and play type guy for them. I think you can put him in, he can help you automatically. Excelled in pass protection at Ohio State. He was good in the pass game. He is not just a third down back. So I think that would have helped them. I do think that the number one thing for him is how will he hold up? Because early in his career there, he definitely dealt with a few injuries. They had Quinshawn Judkins this year to rotate with him. I thought that really helped him. But I think in the 17-game NFL schedule, you're going to want that anyways. Like Jahmyr Gibbs is in Detroit, but you also have David Montgomery. I think, Saquon Barkley is a little bit of a unicorn in that area. They also have Gainwell, who I think does a nice job. We'll see how Barkley holds up again this year, but I think that's asking a lot for most running backs. So if they had a guy that you could rotate with him, Brian Robinson, you have Eckler, you have McNichols, then I think that would absolutely help. But he's a guy that I really like. I just am not sold that they will take a running back at 29. And again, maybe I do know they want to get one. They absolutely want to. My understanding is they definitely want to get a running back. Sometimes I say that, and it's like, but if it doesn't break right, you're not going to get that guy. But I think this draft class is so deep that I'd be really surprised if they don't add a running back. But again, I like Travion, but because I'm not sold, and when I make this pick, it's supposed to be what I think they will do, not necessarily not what I would do. Although there have been times I veered off that, but I try to adhere to that this year. The one year I veered off it, so like the guy I would take was Koromoa, and they took Jamin Davis, and so the rest is history. Now, Koromoa has had injury problems. Anyways, that aside, but that's why I went with Hairston. And I do know, like, he was here, he visited. There's definite interest in him. Amos is another corner I considered. I would say, there's a lot I like about him. I think, part of what, and again, going at corner versus another spot, there's a positional value. And I think when you're drafting a guy, take the best guy. So if you think Harrison's the best guy, you take him. And again, I do think there's definite interest in him and he would offer something, but the positional value of cornerback, defensive end, receiver, like those positions are becoming quite prohibitively expensive. So if you can get a guy, just like you have a quarterback, get a guy now it's more expensive with quarterback, but you get a guy in a rookie deal at those premium spots, it really helps. Again, I pointed this out the other day, the cost to get Marshawn Lattimore, a couple draft picks, and then it's a salary over 17 million, right? So there is an expense associated with that. So if you can get a guy at a premium position on a rookie deal and who can have an impact, that's really good. So that's why I would look at those spots. And it's why, again, I know based on who was gone, Hairston was to me may have been the best guy on, I think, for them and on their board. So that's why I went there. But listen, again, with running back, if you don't take one in the first or second round, there's going to be guys. And if you somehow add a pick in the third round, maybe another pick in the fourth round, you'll have choices with guys to get in those rounds. And guys I think, who can come in and help you in that first year for sure, whether it's in a part-time role. But I think if, like, say, they got a Bashal Tutin, and I like that guy, and I know clean up the fumbling stuff, but I do like him because the guy's got some juice and he's got some speed, and I think he can definitely help them for sure. And so that's why I would like a guy like him. You have other guys, Taj Brooks. There's a handful of running backs. I don't want to go through all of them because I do think there's a handful that could really make a difference for them. But I do like those guys. And so my point is, it's why I think they may wait on a running back because there's depth in this draft. And there are some corners in this draft that I know they like throughout. Quincy Wilson's one, and they're going to get to another guy in the later rounds if they don't do something here. But with Hairston, listen, man, the guy can play. So we're going to start with that. And 6 interceptions in 20 games in Kentucky. These guys had 7 picks last year. So you need a guy who can take the ball away. And one of the things that Dan Quinn has talked about all the time, affecting the quarterback and taking the ball away. Well, I don't know that if some of those guys are gone at 29, if Green's not there, if Ezaraku's not there, and I think there's some other edge guys that you can get in the second round, if whether you trade back or maybe stay at 61, so that you could develop into that. But I don't know that you're going to get an edge guy at 29 that's going to come in and be the double-digit sack guy that everybody would want. It just typically is not going to happen. Even the top 5 guys typically do not come in and do that. They take a year or two because there's skill involved in rushing the passer. It's not just, oh, talent, go get them. You have to learn how to do this at the NFL level. So it's going to be hard to find guys like that. So if you can't find a guy that you love there, then you're going to take another guy who maybe can take the ball away. And by the way, in our draft, the top 2 safeties, and Amore and Starks, were both gone as well. So they were not options either. So, but Hairston can't help them. And he's got really good speed. We saw the test and combine. He's a fast guy. Another trait they like in their corners is 1, take the ball away, 2, short area quickness. And he has that as well. Now, the one thing that showed on tape, I think I told you last week, there was a scout I talked to who felt like he's a tremendous competitor, really, really liked Hairston. And this is the guy who scouted him for another team and really, really likes him and felt like he was, again, tremendous competitor. Had a shoulder injury, and there were some tackling issues that showed up. And the wonder is how much did that shoulder contribute to that? There were a couple times I saw him try to attempt to tackle. It looked like he was protecting something versus trying to just take the guy down. Other times I saw him have some tackle issues against Texas, for example, but I felt like sometimes there was too much cushion. So if you can get the guy to play up a little bit more, if you give a guy a couple yards in the NFL, they're going to make you miss. I don't care who you are. So you're going to have to play a little bit tighter. You can't play 10 yards off on a guy at this level and survive. So to me, some of those tackling issues could be solved. He doesn't have to be a pretty tackler. Get the guy down, compete. And I think that's one thing that if he has that and he shows that and they like that, I think you could definitely help him. Now, one thing that would come into play here is he would be a fourth. He would be, they have 3 other corners that could be playing ahead of him right away. So would he come in right away and make an instant contribution? Well, that's debatable. Now, I think he would be used because you're not going to draft a guy there and not use him. But is he going to be an instant impact guy? Well, maybe not, because you have Marshawn Lattimore, you have Mike Samuelson and Jonathan Jones. All those guys can go in right now and play for you. You have your top 3 corners. You're in good shape with that group. What you don't have, though, is another true outside corner in case something happens to Lattimore. Or now, I guess if something happened like that, you have Samuel Jones, and you can put Igbenogany inside as well. So you do have some flexibility, but it would be nice to have another true outside corner that can play, not just in case Lattimore gets hurt, but just to give you someone else at that spot. You can use them in dime packages for sure, and they use a lot. They definitely would use some 4 cornerback groupings. So there is a way to use him for sure if that's the direction they wanted to go. But it's also the same reason with that depth I just talked about is why they could pass on a corner, because there are a couple later and late in the draft that they do like. And so if they went that direction, that could be why. So anyways, but I do think, offensive line, I think, is another area that they really feel like they would like to address. And just to continue building that wall in front of Jaden Daniels. They definitely seem committed to improving that group, not just stopping at Tunsil. And so that's why I feel like if Tyler Booker is there, I think they would probably run to the podium and feel really good about that pick. I don't know that he's going to be there in our mock. He went to Arizona. My understanding is like that the Cardinals, like that's a guy that clearly they like. And I think, the only question is someone else there in the real draft? Is someone else going to be there that might push him down? And then how other teams do him? I don't know. So he might not be a guy who's there. But the point is, I think there's a vision to try and get that line even better. Wherever that is, it could be taking a tackle like Connolly was in there. He's a tackle who can also play guard. You have Anthony Belton, another tackle. Wyatt Millam is an inside guy. So like there are other guys, there are other guards and stuff that they've looked at that are pretty good. So and I don't want to name everybody because then it just, I'm not Mel Kiper, who is great by the way. I love Mel, great guy. But I think there's point is they are looking to improve, continue to prove, whether it's adding depth and developing someone or getting someone who can plug in and go, right? So I think that's one thing, but I do think there are some good options here. I do think Harrison's a good option. Amos is a good corner too. I like him a lot. So I think, either one of those, but I went with Harrison because I know that there's certainly interest there. I mean, he was one of those top 30 visits guys, not the only corner. So a couple of them, you could have just flipped a coin and said which one. And I think there are going to be some people who aren't as high on him because they may perceive the tackling as an issue. I think when I talked to the scout, he did not see it that way. He liked the competitiveness in him, feels like he can be okay in that area. He's not going to be a big physical run defender, but as long as he competes in that area, you can handle that, right? And so Fred Smoot did not come in. He's more. It's funny because when they took Emmanuel Forbes, Smoot would talk about, well, he was skinny coming to the NFL, et cetera. Well, Smoot was thin. Forbes was rail thin. There was a big difference in their body size. I think for Hairston would be more akin to what Smoot was, and a guy who when Smoot came in the league was not a good run or tackler, improved in that area big time and became because he was a competitor. So I think that's something you have to watch for sure. So anyways, that's why I went with him. And there are guys that Nick Scorton is another guy that could he be a guy? I mean, I don't know that you take him in the first round, but another possibility for sure. I think in this draft, it's going to be a lot of beauty in the eye of the beholder. And I think that's one thing Adam Peters talked about, not quite saying it quite that way with us during his press conference on Tuesday, but that is the implication, right? That there are going to be a lot of guys after those first ten picks or so, it's going to go in direction like, oh, I didn't know this team liked this guy that much. And people are going to say like, oh, that's a big reach. Well, big reach to who? Because you don't know how their boards are. We know how the mock drafts are. We know what the analysts say, and there's a lot of times some commonality to it. But you don't know. We don't know. I don't know all their board. What I do know is I get this spreadsheet from someone who compiles it based on talking to teams throughout the league about his guys, and he knows where teams kind of rank guys. A guy like Scorton was like a high second. Guy like Hairston was a low first round pick. So that was another indicator for me that that's how teams see him. I don't know that he's going to be there either, by the way. I don't know that this would be an ideal scenario for them. All those guys are gone. I think you would look to trade back, but of course you have to have a dance partner. Another name, one name I'll throw out there that and I heard this a couple weeks ago, and I played it for the club members on the club members podcast, which is would they take a guy like linebacker Carson Schwessinger from UCLA? I don't, is he a guy that would go in the first round? I think he's more, I think a lot would consider him as a second round guy. But again, this is like when I tell you what this person sent me, it's a compilation. It doesn't mean it's like every team sees him this way. This is the average of how teams see him. So if it's some teams might see a guy late one or mid one, another team might see him mid two or even late two, right? Because it may not be what they're looking for, may not fit their scheme. So he's going to look at it differently. But Schwessinger, would that be a guy they would look at? I know Adam Schefter mentioned him as a Washington or Buffalo the other day in an ESPN.com piece, and I talked about him a couple weeks ago on the club members podcast. The one thing I would say with him now, is it an impact guy? No. But here's what he would give them if they went that route. Now I don't know that they will, but I'm giving you the name anyway. If they went that route, it's because he's a really good cover guy, and he can play Mike. He can play other linebacker spots, but he can play the Mike as a cover guy, and that's something they don't really have right now. Like that's not Bobby Wagner's strength. So, but would you use a pick on a guy that does that? Like, can you get Jordan McGee to get to that level? Jordan McGee has some good speed, and they definitely look at him as a guy that possibly down the road could replace Wagner whenever that time comes. So I don't know, but it's the name that gets floated out there. So we'll see. We'll see on that one. So There are some guys later in the draft that they could look to develop at corner. You have Quincy Wilson is another corner that was here. Another guy like in the later rounds, Carlin Vigors. I think there's some big fans of his here. And that's a guy that if you're looking late rounds, maybe even an undrafted guy, but I would say probably more late rounds for him, sixth or seventh round. That's a guy that I think that would fit in part because it has some size, but you have also you have those other corners. Like you do have four corners that you can play with in Jones, Lattimore, Samuelstill, and Igbenogany. So you can afford then to go get a guy like if you really like a guy, feel like you can develop and he fits your system, then you can take a chance on a guy like that. Now, the one matchup that Vigors had when he was with Louisiana Monroe was against Matthew Golden, and he did a nice job. Like that film will stick out. So I think that's a guy like if you don't get one early, they could do that. Like there are some guys at edge rusher as well. If you don't get one in the first round, Femi Olafadu in the second round, I really like that guy at 61, a possibility. Kyle Kennard, a possibility beyond the first round. So there's another pass rusher, Aiden Huntington. We mentioned him before in the later rounds. He can run. He's from Tulane, 6'1", like 270, something like that. But he ran 11.4 100-yard dash in high school. Like you like guys like that to try and develop because again, like if you don't, I don't know that their pass rush is going to be any worse than it was last year when they had Dante Fowler. I'm not going to, if Dante Fowler had had that kind of an impact, there would have been a lot more teams coming to get him. And that didn't happen. So you have to look at that. Like, yes, he had 10 and a half sacks, but how and why? And so, like, I think he did a nice job. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't want to overstate the level that he was at. So is their pass rush going to be significantly worse than last year? No, it's not. So if you can find that guy high, or can you get that guy lower that you want to develop and add to the mix, you can do that as well. But I think they can manufacture what they have. Most of their pass rush success came off of a lot of five-man or simulated pressures, right? It wasn't just straight four-man rush. Like the impact is when you can have just a four-man rush and get home, and that's not what they were doing. So like they don't have that guy. Can you find that guy in this draft? Maybe. Like I like Olafadu because he's raw. He's more new to the position. JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State, another guy that I obviously like, not just because he went to Ohio State, but because he's a really good player. And he's a guy that can give you be a three down end for you for sure. A lot to learn still. I think a difference between Olafadu and JTT is one is new to the position and probably is not maxed out. I think JTT has so much experience and coming from where he did, has what's his ceiling in the NFL. I think he'll be one of those solid NFL players. So we'll see what happens there. But again, there's options beyond just 29. Landon Jackson's another one that they like. So that wouldn't be interesting where he goes as well. So anyways, that was we got there. Now let's get to the character part because I think this applies obviously every year in the draft. You always hear that. And I know Mike Green's name came up, but again, he visited here. What does that tell you? That tells you there is interest. Now, when you visit on these top 30s, it also suggests you want to get to know them better. But along the way, you're also going to be looking into whatever is going on with them and looking at the allegations that were made against him. So my understanding is here's the one thing. This is what I'd say. If teams feel good about it, he's not going to be at 29 because he's just too talented. So you'll know how teams feel about him if he's not at 29, it's because they feel like the allegations don't hold up. So in fact, because then the rest of his package, like what teammates or coaches say about him, seems to be pretty positive. So anyway, so that's why I think they would be okay drafting Mike Green. Again, if they felt like I'll just say this in general, they have not told me this, but in general, if you feel the allegations are that strong, I don't think he's visiting here. And I know a lot of times those visits are to get to know a guy. It's not always about like, we love this guy. Sometimes it's about, we want to find out more. We want to dig in deeper to this particular player for whatever reason. There are going to be some guys who did not come here that they're like, we don't need to meet with this guy again. We've got it. He's our kind of guy. he's okay, right? So, and sometimes there's a lot of reasons why they may bring a guy in. It's not just because we want to draft you; it's because we want to get to know you better to see if we want to draft you. But again, if they were not sold on on Mike Green, they would not. I don't think they would have brought him in. James Pierce did not visit, so I think if you really wanted to dig into James Pierce to know more based on the stuff that you hear from Tennessee, like you probably would have brought him in to visit. One thing that I will say, like, and this is where I would say, and I agree with Adam Peters, this is always a case by case basis. And just because one worked out doesn't mean they all work out. You have to analyze just because Jalen Carter is doing well in Philly, his situation was different than what this player X is or player Y is. So there's different things to find out, right? Micah Parsons is a tremendous athlete. So you may say, well, you might look at it and say, this is what we hear, but this is what we see, and we're going to live with whatever. If the guy's not that talented, you're going to play it differently, right? It's just the way it is. Adam Peters was saying there was a guy in San Francisco that they had some concern that there I don't know about them, but there were definitely concerns about this player. They drafted him, turned out to be a really good player, and they were very happy. He was not a first round pick, so you don't always know what you're going to get. But like, I think you have to, the point is, I don't think it was a first round pick. Let me take that back because I don't, I don't think this player was a first round pick. But bottom line is, you're not going to pick somebody high in the draft that you have those kind of concerns about, like in the top 10 or so. When you get down there, maybe you look at it differently. But I think for some guys, it's like, what round is this in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, and Peter said it, you just have to make sure because um, you don't always know, right? And again, case by case basis, and it just depends what you hear and what you think your culture can absorb. And it just because you have a good culture last year doesn't mean, oh, you just go out and sign, get whatever, right? It doesn't work like that. And I remember I've brought this up before. Joe Gibbs would always say, this guy's been like this for 20 some years. What makes you think I can fix him in one? Like you can't put that on a guy. Like the guy you have to have the right areas to work with. Sometimes a guy in college, and I'm not speaking in generally, might get led astray by teammates. Maybe he's just a follower. This is what you find out. Like, what was the issue there? But again, Pierce did not visit. So there you go. But anyways, I just think it was interesting what Adam Peters talked about with that, because he's right. Like, you can't just summarily you have to do the research. You have to analyze what is going on, and you have to be honest about what your building can or cannot absorb and where you're at with it. You can't just, it's got to be more than, oh, we won 12 games last year. Now it's great. Let's go. It's got to, would this guy fit in? Would player X fit in? Anyways, there you go. Now, trade down. Would they trade down? Well, of course that's a possibility. But here's the problem. Um, who knows who's going to be there? Now, typically everybody's like, oh, what if a quarterback's there? Well, this is a bad quarterback class. Like, it's bad. Like, this is where I say Washington was very fortunate to have the number 2 pick last year and not this year, because you have the number 2 pick this year, you're not picking a quarterback. The Shador Sanders is not a number 2 quarterback, right? I've talked to some coaches who think he'll get picked in the first round. I've talked to others who think he's going to be a backup in the NFL. So the point is, it's a wide range of opinions on the guy. And so I just think you have to look and say, you're fortunate that Washington had the number 2 pick in a draft, that Jaden Daniels was sitting there at number 2. And if it hadn't been him, like, there are other quarterbacks who are good in that class that would have been gone ahead of what most of these guys this year. Cam Ward would have been like a 4th or 5th guy last year. So they were in a fortunate spot. That helps. But the point is, like, even at the back end of the first round, so I went back and looked at the last 5 years of the drafts. The only quarterback in that time that a team traded back into the first round for was Green Bay and Jordan Love. Otherwise, it was a different position. So keep in mind, it's not really what you want to look for. What's the position where they're having a run on players? Are there going to be a few tackles or linemen go? Going to be a few edge rushers go, and now they want to move up. Corners, what could it be? Like, those are the spots that you got to look at. If there's a run on a position, that's when a team might get antsy to move up. And, clearly, I think they would probably like to add some picks. They have five. I don't know that they feel the urgency to do that. I don't know. I think you have to wait and see how everything folds. And it could be that it could be that you trade the second round pick, right, to get some picks. You could always trade that and get another third, whatever. Um, so that's the thing. And I think, when you look at some of the trades, like I went back and looked at the last 5 years and what are you giving up? A lot of times what you're getting is not so much an extra pick, but improved pick. So you might trade a first and a fourth, and maybe you're getting back a high second and then, a third round pick. So now you have a second, third, 2 seconds and a third versus a first, second, and a fourth. And in this draft, if you're in rounds 2 through 4, you're in a sweet spot for to pick a guy. So like that's not a necessarily bad deal, but it's not always to get better more picks. It may be to get better picks, right? And then maximize what you do have. Like, again, that's what most of the time that seems to be what happens. There are definitely times where that's not the case. For example, let's see this. Second round in 2023, Philly traded to Houston, 62nd pick for 65, 188, and 230. So the sixth and seventh round picks. The ones that you would want to look at is New England in 2022 sent the 21st pick to Kansas City for the 29th, the 94th, and then 121st. Tennessee to the Jets that same year, 26 and 101 for 35, 69, and 163. So you're in those cases, they're getting more. In 2020, New England to the Chargers, the 23rd pick for the 37th and 71st. Minnesota, San Francisco for the 25th for 31, 117, 176. So that would be something to certainly look at for them. But in other words, but the problem is who can make those kind of trades out. There aren't a lot of teams that can do that. So I was looking at it, Carolina has two in the fourth, but I don't, they don't really have, I don't look at them as realistic. Cleveland is the 33rd pick. They have two picks in the third. They also have one in the fourth. So could they move up for a guy, move up, several spots to get a guy, right? That Jacksonville has the 36th pick. They also have two picks in the third. Would they be interested in moving up? The Raiders have the 37th pick. They have three in the sixth round. The Patriots have the 38th pick, two in the third, two in the fifth. So Tennessee has the 35th pick. They have two in the fourth, two in the fifth. Could you get one of those teams there? But I really don't think it's all that realistic that all those teams would be interested. Minnesota also wants to trade. They only have four picks, so they'd like to get something more for sure as well. So, anyways, just wanted to go down that part of it. And then an ideal situation to me, they get again plug and play. If Booker is there, I'd be ecstatic for them. I think that'd be really good. I like Azaraku. I like Mike Green. I think those would be good. I do like Hairston. I think those would be good. I love the Femi Olafadu from UCLA. Really would be a good pick because he's a chess piece. He can play inside. He's physical. He can rush, and I think he's developing there. Tootin, I think in the fourth round, if he's there, a lot of juice that he could add. Huntington, Vigors, late rounds, good picks. I think if you trade back, like I would, that's when I'd look at Henderson. I don't know that they would in the upper second round, but you can still get whether it's a corner, there's linemen there. I think that would be good if they can bolster that line. The areas that I say you need to address these running back, edge, corner, and O line, not necessarily in that order, but those are the spots I think you got to come away with. You can get a receiver if you add a pick, great. If not, I think you can live with that. If some people want a tight end, great. But I think the key is where do they feel Ben Sinnott is at in his development? If he feel he can play, if he can do something, then you don't need to go get that guy. But I think those other four spots are areas where you'd like to add something. And then, again, Huntington, big guy who can run. Eugene Asante, a linebacker late, another one to watch, got speed. So those are, you could add special teams help just through those picks alone. So anyways, I apologize. I'm starting to ramble again. Those are my final thoughts leading into the draft, giving you a lot of draft content this week, some longer shows. So I hope you enjoy those. You got a couple days now to digest it all, and we'll get ready for that draft on Thursday night. It's going to be a long wait. I'm going to have to drink a few cups of coffee to stay awake. It's going to be past my bedtime. And I hope I don't do what I do at home, which is fall asleep in the chair and ask my wife what happened in that show. So one other reminder here, folks, and I brought this up the other day, and I did have someone reach out to me, say, maybe I should phrase it like this, but if you're over a certain age, talk to your physician about getting a PSA test for prostate. for prostate cancer. And, do me a favor, talk to your physician. Don't wait, have the conversation. And I know, there's, but that would be the number one step to do. And I asked you to get a PSA, but as someone else said, maybe you should ask them to talk to their physician first to see about that, because there are sometimes false positives, et cetera. Do me a favor, talk to your physician. This is something very near and dear to me right now. So I'm asking you, if a few of you do that and it helps you, that would really mean a lot to me. So anyways, that's my little spiel on that. That being said, I appreciate you guys tuning in to this point. I'll be back on Thursday night / Friday morning, wrapping up the first round of the draft for the Washington Commanders. Let's go. It's finally here. Time to get it started. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.